This episode of Retrospective Reviews is brought to you by my new book, Gaia Solace Volume 1, a graphic novel of epic proportions now available on Amazon Kindle. Hello everyone, welcome to R&R, where bad media from the past needs a beating. And here we go again. We're going back to an awful episode of an awful memory. There's something I didn't cover enough on about this game before banishing it from my library, but I'll have to return to the dark tomb of the Angel of Darkness.
And who would that be?
Whoa, Angel? I'm not talking about you!
Oh, don't be silly. Of course you're not. I'm the Angel of Light. So who is this nemesis of mine?
You may remember my review of Tomb Raider the Angel of Darkness in one of my earlier episodes, and me ripping the game to shreds as I capture my gameplay in real time.
There it is. Ow! I threw down fucking wedge! I'm trying to go forward!
Looking back, I don't think it should really count as a comprehensive review, as it shares more in common with Let's Plays and commentaries. However, I only covered the first part of the game before I finally broke down. This is quite different from my review of Bubsy 3D, where I recorded review audio over my pre-recorded gameplay footage. Now I feel that my skills as a reviewer have improved to the point where I can revisit reviews I've done in the past that I feel needs more attention. Angel of Darkness is one such example, as I cut the initial review short since I couldn't stand playing any more of this broken-ass mess of a game.
Now, I'll protect you with my light before the darkness follows you again.
Thanks a lot, little angel. I would definitely need it. And yes, Tomb Raider is back on its heels again, but in a different way, having given 2 previous successful installments of the second reboot. However, this release of Angel of Darkness made the future so bleak that it almost didn't happen. Those around in the PS2 era very well likely remembered the hype surrounding this game. Having replayed the classic series again before moving on to the installment that ended core design and tarnished the careers of the developers involved, there seems to be some continuity errors that pop up from time to time. So if you want to skip the spoilers, you will want to skip right down to the gameplay section. First,
Egypt, Verna. You walked away and left me.
You will notice Lara herself, who looks perfectly fine after what she's been through since the last revelation. As you all know, during the ending, the tomb caved in on Lara while her mentor, Von Croy, tried to help her after he broke free of Set's curse. Afterwards, during Chronicles, he was still trying to excavate the place in hopes of finding her alive. The plot of Tomb Raider Chronicles follows the retrospective of Lara's previous adventures leading up to the original, as anonymous friends and family members mourn her supposed death and talk about her many adventures in this canon. Second, if Lara made it out alive, well, wouldn't she be recovering from several injuries she had to endure from being buried alive and being taken for dead? Third, why would you take out any tomb raiding in place of some dark murder mystery? They don't connect! The answer lies in the troubling development history where core design had such huge ambitions for the 6th installment. However, due to their usual development style of releasing a new Tomb Raider every year, the team split up to work on 2 different games, one on Chronicles and the other on the next-gen title, which would be titled The Angel of Darkness. The latter game had a bunch of new, inexperienced developers working on it under the watchful eyes of veterans who still had their minds stuck in the PS1 era. They didn't realize how much more powerful the PS2 was and believed what they had in mind would be too big for the system to handle. So they scrapped all progress made and had to start everything all over again. This move later made them impatient when too many gameplay ideas were thrown into the pot that resulted in a rather slow development with several delays to the point of cutting several levels from the game in order to rush it out soon. Maybe starting over from scratch wasn't such a good idea after all. This is very similar to what happened with Final Fantasy XIII during the end of its development, where they cut so many areas from the final product to make a desired released window. It was a disappointment, but at least the game was playable and worked as intended, despite being rather short, which saved it from being an absolute failure. This is not the case in Angel of Darkness, where the removal of such content did result in so many bugs, terrible controls, boring gameplay that was mismatched into a complete mess with stupid enemy AI, terrible storylines, and settings that are so out of place that it's unrecognizable as what it is. Now, you could say that it was rushed out to tie in with that terrible movie release, Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life.
Eat it, Werner. You walked away and left me.
So, after that story contradiction, Lara blacks out for some reason and wakes up to find Von Croy dead. Being framed for the murder, she escapes from the building and jumps out into the streets. Wait, how did the dogs grab hold of her backpack if they knocked her out of the window backwards? Let's watch that again. Did they reach around her in a split second to grab her backpack? Nobody checked this opening sequence to see if it makes any sense. So here is where the problem starts. Right during the tutorial, you'll notice how slow the run and walk cycle animations are in the game, running at around 30 to 40 FPS. This also delays the other actions to stop, jump, roll, and do everything else, because you will keep falling down and lose chunks of your health every single time, because there is such a delay for grabbing ledges and pulling yourself up. If you had not figured out yet, the controls haven't changed at all. Lara still maneuvers like a tank.
I actually think you may have heard that there's something called an analog stick. Couldn't you just code the movement to where you use the analog stick instead of using an extra walk button?
And yes, I know the older Tomb Raider games had tank-like controls as well, but they worked because the level design was built on a grid using the exact same engine with a frame rate no higher than 30 FPS. Speaking of controls, the original PlayStation initially launched with the standard D-pad controllers. The dual analog would only release 2 years later, 1 year after the original Tomb Raider. So it made perfect sense to keep the same D-pad controls intact for gamers who hadn't upgraded to the analog controller. So it was essential to have a walk, grab, and look buttons. But the Stone Age dumbasses at Core Design did not realize the player can both slow down and accelerate the character they were controlling based on how far the analog stick is tilted. And little did they know that action games released around the same time already caught on board, and they looked and played much like this.
Okay, first of all, the tutorial actually puts you right in the middle of a hazard.
If you fall down after the first jump, you can accidentally be killed by a dog chained up to the wall, right during the tutorial stage. However, once you climb through the windows near the top of the building, you will find out the absolute worst new gameplay mechanic in the entire game.
I need to shimmy to that walkway, but I don't think I'm strong enough yet.
That's right, Lara is too weak to push a crate, open a door, or making a jump that's needed to progress until you do something else. So you have to build up your strength by pushing around or busting open other objects.
I feel stronger now. My legs feel stronger. Maybe I'll make that jump.
Excuse me, but fitness does not work this way! Wouldn't your muscles be too tired? Plus, they don't gain strength in that instant. And did you know the grip meter that they added here could just suck a dick? That's also in the same gameplay mechanic. Core, whomever was in charge was just high as a fucking kite. So much that in a developer's meeting they were like, "Yep, I love this new gameplay element. That's a new innovation for the 21st century." So eccentrically, before shitting into their own hands and smearing it all over their face and nipples like a deranged mental patient. After all this, you escape the police by following into a garbage dumpster where this game actually belongs. However, you wake up to find yourself into the apartment of a woman named Carvier. Who cares? We only see her once. She asks what happened to Werner von Croy.
There was gunfire. That's all I can recall.
Gunfire? Then he was shot? Did you kill him?
I can't remember. It's all a blur.
Miss Croft, I strongly suggest that you talk to the police.
And no matter what you say to her, she still calls the police anyway like a conniving little bitch she is. There are some items to pick up, but it's really not worth it because you need to get the fuck out of here pronto because the police will come by and arrest you if you take too long to climb out the window. So after you wake up in an abandoned subway station, and you are searching for this criminal mentioned in Von Croy's journal, who goes by the name of Louis Burchard, you have the option to roam around and talk to people searching for clues around the suspect's whereabouts.
Do that. Why don't you try Café Metro?
Who do I talk to there? The owner?
Hey, I'm kidding, really. The guy's a complete loser. Forget it.
You do have dialogue options, but it will hardly ever affect your progress in the game, with the exception of people refusing to help you out if you pick the wrong choices, and after you meet the crime lord you're searching for himself, Louis Burchard. This is an option where if you do get smart with him, he will get pissed off and shoot you dead.
Maybe. It might be linked to what happened to a friend of mine.
I doubt it. Get her out of here.
You can find some extra items on the street, which you could sell to Ren's pawn shop for some extra cash, which really has no other purpose than to upgrade weapons you can actually get for a brief period of time until much later on in the game. Because Core was too lazy to put any more use into it. And by the way, there is no other area like this in the entire game. So why put it in the motherfucking game? This isn't an RPG, for God's sake!
They try to throw every single genre of video games into one package!
However, you can have 2 NPCs on the street to help you out. One will want you to retrieve his box in this abandoned nightclub called the Serpent Rouge. The other is to reach him through his ex-girlfriend's apartment, to Burchard's hideout. But there is a catch if you accept help from this one guy named Pierre. You can search his ex-girlfriend's apartment for valuable items such as this sports watch that you could trade in at the pawn shop. Oh wait, never mind! Ren is now lying in a pool of his own blood.
That's right. Ren, the owner of the pawn shop, dies before you can do anything more with any items you've collected, including that sports watch. There's no one else in there to take his place to fill in for him, and there are no other pawn shops in the game. And there's no way you can get rid of this watch. I mean, and you can't even exit out the apartment either to return back to the pawn shop, because once you're there, too late, you're stuck there.
After that escape from the pawn shop in the town you will never see again, you come across a secondary character named Curtis Trent. You only play as him for a couple brief moments for a few times in the second half of the game. Here, there isn't as many new things that need to be addressed as the game really starts to shit the bed from here on out. But not before you reach the one tomb in the entire game called Tomb Raider.
One fucking tomb! All because you just had to put nearly the entire game into Paris, France, and really only include the actual tomb right in the middle of the game where it transitions over to Prague. Now why is that? Well, that's mainly because a lot of the content that would have been tombs and other locations were cut from the final game.
This leads to a tedious puzzle called the Hall of Seasons, which is exactly where I gave up when I first played through this piece of shit game many years ago. Instead, we get more confusion and bullshit. One would be obtaining the obscure paintings, which are the main artifacts in the game. Here you will find the real murderer who is behind the alias of Eckhart. You know, that mysterious looking fellow who killed Ren and trashed his pawn shop. He is actually from the sole survivor of the demonic Nephilim race. And he can also shapeshift into Curtis Trent and Louis Burchard, who is trying to kill people to rebuild his race and for his sole survival for some reason. Like, I have no clue. Here, the game core really just gave up at this point, so they're really just looking for more ideas to pull out of their ass.
I'm offering you the chance to become part of a benign new order in the world.
You are kidding, right?
We Nephilim have only ever been trying to survive.
You fight Eckhart and his ability to shapeshift into multiple forms, and then you eradicate the entire Nephilim race from the planet. Yes, Lara Croft just committed genocide. And who cares what happens afterwards? The end!
Alright, Angel of Light, vanquish this game to the bowels of hell!
And the sad thing is, Core was actually proud of this piece of shit. In fact, they actually had a trilogy planned out for this entire story arc. And with no surprise, the other two games were actually cancelled, with the studio Eidos stripping Core of the Tomb Raider license and handing it over to Crystal Dynamics. This left Core design to rotten waste until finally closing its doors in 2006. This was in fact the same year the new development team at Crystal Dynamics released and rebooted the series with Tomb Raider Legend, which actually surprised me since I seriously thought that they were never gonna make any more Tomb Raider games after this colossal absolute failure. And I was actually blown away by how innovative it really was. I was thinking, this is exactly what Angel of Darkness should have been. So kudos to Crystal Dynamics. Given that new success, they also had another successful reboot which we are currently experiencing right now.
And this is why you shouldn't rush games, especially if you want to make them really big and ambitious, to the likes of what no one's ever seen before. I mean, game development is already a very fragile, painstaking form of art, where if you fuck one thing up, it's not gonna work. That's why it takes a lot of time and caution, my friends. This is Marionama, signing off.
Thanks for watching. I really hope you liked this video. If you want to check out more from Marionama, please hit the subscribe button below, or go to my website at www.marliomedia.com. And if you really like the content, be sure to support me on Patreon or follow me on Twitch TV. And as always, sign on.